Live
Stretch it out.
from an anal retentive Tuesday. Kind of is. It's a giant.
Is it?
Like it's joined as always by Emma, invisibly lurking,
She is.
or I think as Emily Chu calls her, Emily Larking. I couldn't tell if it was larking or
she's
lurking.
got an
I kind of like
accent.
like if I didn't
Look,
know. I like that.
Emily's smarter than us, so let's just go with whatever she said.
Oh, I didn't imply she wasn't. And Meta Matt Bacardi. Did they ever call you Bacardi in high school?
They did it. Not that any of
Okay.
them actually drank Bacardi because they couldn't afford
Right.
it. Like that was the top shelf.
I'm not an active TikTok user. Not at all. Just saying.
That's
Today's
you.
brown, buttery bag of Biz Nuggets called February 8th, 2022. Peter Thiel, Peloton, and Spotify sitting in a tree. Kissing.
I like it when you sing. You need to sing more. We need to make that a daily bit.
I promise to prove how they're all kissing. Here we go.
All right.
Let's start with Peloton.
Oh, it's already down.
I know. Boy, Peloton, you're really good at burying the lead. I opened up all your corporate filings, everything. I opened up everything, and here's what I saw. I saw this. Peloton announces comprehensive program to reduce costs and drive growth. Blah, blah, blah.
Yawn.
And this, Peloton has also issued a letter to its stockholders announcing its financial result, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
This, on February 8th, 2022, Peloton will hold a conference call regarding its final blah, blah, blah. And then, how about this one? Realigning business operations, reducing manufacturing footprint, blah, blah, blah. And then this one expects to deliver at least $800 million in annual run rate cost savings, blah, blah, blah. I was like, where's the beef here? So I open up your shareholder letter. First of all, that's literally dominated by a giant picture of a sweaty, tattooed dude lifting weights.
I mean, that's kind of
Okay.
something.
So I keep scrolling.
I'm in on that.
Finally, at page 3, Peloton CEO John Foley to step down.
Was he the tattooed dude?
And a meaningful reduction of their workforce. Those seem like the leads.
They do
I'm
seem
just saying.
leady.
I'm just saying, usually I don't have to dig around so much when I'm like in public filings, but that stuff was buried. So let's get into it. I actually had to open another document to determine how meaningful the reduction really is. And it's
Okay.
2,800 actual people meaningful. That seems like a lot of people.
Wow. I like that
Yeah.
actual. I think you were calling them the actual people. Yeah.
The actual people. Let's talk about CEO John Foley stepping down. He will become executive chair.
Oh,
Which
that's
means-
the baller
yeah.
move these days.
Yeah, which means he's still an executive. And
Right.
his influence, which includes his 40% voting power, ain't going nowhere. So I
Good.
don't know.
Nice.
I don't know. Stepping down.
Who's the new puppet?
All right. So good luck to new CEO Barry McCarthy, because the top 5 executives at Peloton control 77% of the vote, and there are 3 people on the board, including Foley, Director Jay Hogue, and Peloton President William Lynch. They control 90% of the vote. So good luck with that, Barry.
Barry
Yeah.
Barry McCarthy is ex Spotify Barry McCarthy.
Okay, I'm getting there. Relax. I'm getting there. I gotta prove.
I'm just
eventually
asking.
my
I know what
kissing
I
and
know.
The KISSING. I gotta prove it eventually. Here we go. First of all, according to the math, basically every independent shareholder votes against everything at Peloton, except for there's that power
do.
trio that holds the vote, but everybody else hates everything. I'm just telling the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
As you do.
So maybe Barry won't be so worried because, as Matt alluded to, Barry understands fake public company dictators, as he is currently a director of Spotify, where he recently served as its CFO. So, in other words, what exactly is changing at Peloton? I don't friggin' know. Who knows?
What I like about this move is that Peloton very clearly said, look, we eat children with our treadmill machines. Spotify misinforms them. That seems like a synergy. That's like a wedding made in heaven. Like eating.
More importantly, I got to link Spotify and Peloton right there. And
instantaneously.
I think the real reason why this CEO got let go, or he's moving over, is that why did they not realize the ad potential of, okay, you eat a child on your treadmill, but then you can burn off those calories on said treadmill, right?
Why don't they basically say, we will eat your misinformed child so they don't ruin society? Like that.
Then you can burn off child calories. It's just a
While
perfect
you're-
circle. I don't know what's
Well,
wrong with
it's
these
really
people.
a brilliant marketing campaign. Someone
right.
needs to get on this.
Take
Speaking of children, in our continuing public service inspirational
true.
preteen moment, here's the headline: Meta renews warning to EU it will be forced to pull Facebook.
You
All
gotta
right, so
explain this.
the context here is Meta is Facebook, okay, just in case you're confused who Meta is. And the EU is changing a law that Facebook is saying, and Facebook is Mark Zuckerberg, so Zuckerberg is saying, if you instate this law, we are threatening to pull out entirely of the EU. PSA
Okay. Nice
about standing up to bullies.
yes.
We believe the EU should not let Meta bully them for the right to look through their trash, because bullying is wrong. Right? Am I right, my 10-year-old daughter? The EU, by my last count, there's one college dropout telling 27 democratic countries with a combined population of 500 million people over 1.6 million square miles that if they won't let me have Timmy's Xbox because I want it, I'm never playing with you again. That's bullying, and that's wrong. And let's be clear. Mark Zuckerberg does, in fact, just want to know how many packages of firm wet soy you ate this month so he can sell the information to Disney, who's the largest advertiser on Facebook, and they can package free soy with your purchase of a Mulan dress. There is no upside for you, EU. Don't get bullied. Don't get bullied by Meta. Number 2, don't get in the unmarked white van. Facebook is the unmarked kidnapper van. The EU law came up because the EU nations didn't trust the US to protect citizens' data, and Facebook is the kidnapper van of data privacy. If you're not sure who to trust in your middle school, look for clues and use your intuition. Should you trust a college dropout who faces $15 billion in class action lawsuits because he was tracking users even after they signed out of his app, who illegally used facial recognition software on your pictures, who subverted an election, who used racial and sexual orientation data in advertising, who had 500 million users' data hacked, and was found to be reading your WhatsApp messages before they get encrypted? Is that the guy whose van you get in? Do not get in the kidnapper van, EU. Don't be bullied, and don't fall for the kidnappers. That's my preteen PSA for today.
I miss the days where those were the two big worries: a kidnapper vans and like maybe a razor blade in the Snickers bar or something. Like what happened those days?
It was easier times.
Yeah. Okay. So, but that sounds like good news. Is that what you're telling me, that Mark is throwing a little temper tantrum and he might pull out of you? I mean, that's
I got to
great for
credit
Europeans.
The great Paul Hodgson wrote a piece where he said engaging with Twitter and Facebook is like engaging with children, and it really, they are children.
He has the receipts to prove it in that article. I don't remember where that came out, but it came out somewhere. Look it up.
Capital
Google it.
Monitor.
No, don't Google it. DuckDuckGo it. Come on. Get with the plug. Here we go. Up next, 2 brief updates on Spotify. Here's a story that's not going to quit for a while. First, and this is the only reason why I pulled this story, Neil Young, who I worship and love, clearly listens to Business Pants.
Yeah.
Without a shadow
Great
of the doubt.
news. Great
If you can have Jesus Christ, I can have the idea that Neil Young clearly listens to Business Pants. Here we go.
Wow, there's a correlation for you.
We said yesterday that we weren't going to waste time with Joe Rogan's apology because this is all about Daniel Ek. Neil agrees. Neil Young urges Spotify workers to quit their jobs before the company eats up your soul, and says CEO Daniel Ek is your big problem, not Joe Rogan. I will say this. In the same letter, he also, Neil had a busy day yesterday. In the very same letter, he also tells people to divest from U.S. banks that continue to fund fossil fuels.
Wow, he's all
Uh,
over the place.
Yeah, he might as well have signed off the letter as Neil Mr. ESG Young because he
Wow.
hit all three letters with gusto. He hit the E, divestment, right? Divestment falsely. He hit the S, quit the misinformers, and he hit the G, act as a dictator. I love you, Neil Young. That was brilliant.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Neil, since we know you listen, join us on Business Pants. This is our bread and
Please.
butter, baby.
Here's the unfun part of this Spotify. Second, the bro culture is wooing Rogan. Shares of the CF acquisition for SPAC. Ugh, I hate saying those things. Which agreed to merge with YouTube competitor Rumble last year, soared as much as 40% yesterday after Rumble CEO Chris Pavlovsky attempted to poach Rogan away from Spotify with a $100 million offer. Here's what he said. He said, how about you bring all your shows to Rumble, both old and new, with no censorship for $100 million over 4 years? Yes, this is totally legit. Okay, 4 points. Business School 101, by that I mean an MBA program at Cornell, teaches us that a company and or an employment offer that says the words, this is totally legit, is totally legit. Okay?
Yeah,
Just
I believe
so we know.
that's true. I believe that works out. Contract law.
Second, who has invested substantially in Rumble? Who is their big investor? That would be Peter Thiel.
Oh, thank God. Whew.
Okay.
I thought it was going to
third.
be liberal.
Yeah. Third, Pavlovsky said, he also said this, importantly, I am going to retain voting control of the combined company to facilitate the execution of Rumble's mission on behalf of all stakeholders. So
That's
he's
a real
saying,
quote?
yeah, it's a real quote. I got it linked here. It'll go on our newsletter. He's saying that the most important part here is that he's going to be the dictator he's a dictator. Yeah.
There's no difference between him and everyone else. Good.
In fact, there was a great conference call with a shareholder saying like, how do we know that there's no Wall Street big money involved here? He's like, no, it's just Peter Thiel. Don't worry. It's like Peter Thiel's not a big. Oh, anyway,
He's a
moving
billionaire. Silicon Valley billionaire.
on. Moving on. I went to rumble.com and here are their top 3 videos. This is not a joke. Here are the top 3 videos. First one's called Genocide Olympics, How Chinese Propaganda Runs the World. Number 2 is called Hannity. If you don't like Joe Rogan, change the channel. That's Sean Hannity from Fox News. And the third big video is Siberian Husky has epic snow fight with owner. There you go.
Oh.
That's the bro culture right there.
That's great. I did think Genocide Olympics might have been different. The subtitle after the colon does make it sound a little more like general propaganda. But Genocide Olympics by itself, is that like who can be more genocidal first, right? Like who comes first place for genocide?
More importantly, I masterfully linked Peter Thiel with Joe Rogan, with Spotify, with Peloton. Come on.
Speaking of Peter Thiel,
here
here's
we
the
go.
headline, the last headline of our day, and we might have a discussion about this afterwards. Peter Thiel to exit Meta's board to support Trump-aligned candidates. I think the real story here, Peter Thiel is leaving Facebook's board after he was the angel investor in Facebook. So he's been with Facebook since the beginning, since like 2000, like forever ago. And I think the real story here is the storiness of this. Thiel invested in Zuck when he was a tender 20 years old.
Yep.
We actually covered in a really old show how geese imprint on their closest approximate adult when they're born, much like the Peter Thielian imprint on Mark Zuckerberg when he was 20. Thiel is Zuck at this point.
Well,
they'll be on calls.
Yeah.
What?
Can I add this before you move on? Zuck said in today's press release, deeply grateful for him teaching me so many lessons about business, economics, and life, and all that. So, yeah, he was Zuck's Harvard because he left Harvard. Peter Thiel became Harvard.
That's right. He was the completion of Zuck's education. They'll be on calls this weekend talking about how funny it is that anyone cared about him walking away because, like, basically they're one human being. So, to me that's not the story. The story, and this is something you and I talked about in pre-production, is this libertarian move to the unregulated metaverse. Why is Thiel leaving in the first place? because he wants to support people who will give him unfettered, free speechy, libertarian access to something. Teal acolytes started in no particular order. Clearview AI, the company that stole all your Facebook photos, and in case you go to like a knitting convention and they want to ID you as an enemy of the state, Clearview AI can do that. Palantir, a company that actually sells your data to law enforcement to arrest you, like in Minority Report, except the minorities are actual minorities that they basically are identifying as criminals. And any number of other sort of libertarian, crypto-y, shadowy, conspiracy theory kind of places. Teal has so many liberal assholes telling him that human rights matter and democracy matters and yada, 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 that he has very effectively removed himself from the board of the company where people yell at him so that he can go live in a crypto-tagged non-universe where untraceable breadcrumbs are only traceable by the white libertarian dudes who started that not real, unregulated world. This is a brilliant move to move into the metaverse where no one will pay attention.
Yeah.
That is my set. That's my feeling on this.
And to hitch his wagon? Do you hitch your wagon?
I think you hitch your
train,
wagon.
your caboose.
No,
to
you
Trump,
a wagon. A wagon.
because it's really it's Trump's, and I'm not ascribing this to Trump. I don't think he's smart enough, but it's whoever's running Trump, Steve Bannon. I don't know. It's that descent into chaos that's going to make the metaverse all the more. It's going to pop even bigger, right? I mean, as our real life descends into chaos, isn't there a lot more money to be made in the metaverse?
There's a lot of money to be made, yeah.
You know, when we started this company, we talked a lot about like Cold Wars, but now I'm starting to think like maybe the metaverse is the new battlefield. It's like the new, you know what I mean? Like we don't seem to fight conventional wars as much anymore. That used to be the playground for the right wing to make all their money, but now it's like let's turn our democracy and all of our regulation bureaucrats into a chaotic shitstorm, and let's funnel it all into the metaverse, and that's where we're going to make our money. I don't know. It's a theory I just formulated this second, so go easy on it. Come on.
If you want to listen to us talk about this, we're going to have a discussion right now. I'm going to buzz us out of our daily show, and if you like this, you should get more of it tomorrow. We're here every single day bringing you the top stories. But stick around for more conversation. Here we go. All right. I like the anticlimax of it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to pre-discuss before you wanted to cut us off.
I like pre-discussion. Here, I have to say, and I said this yesterday, it seems like we're in a space where the largest 5, 6, 7, 8 companies in the world are basically run by a bunch of white dudes with a tremendous amount of money, but very differing philosophies on how to spend that money. You have like Musk and Bezos, who believe they should spend every dollar they have, and we're talking billions of dollars, to ride space dildos to Mars, right? Like to colonize other real worlds, and like fly into space. And Musk is trying to connect everyone in the universe through satellites and all that stuff. And then you have Zuckerberg on the other side, who is basically moving into an unregulated, unfettered, like fake world, which is terrifyingly tracking everything you do in the real world and bringing it into fake space to capture every dollar that you have. I feel like we're in a position where we basically have to pick sides between space dildos and fake universe.
Except there's an important distinction between Musk and Bezos, is that Musk is very much entrenched in the libertarian world, whereas Bezos is more of a traditional kind of Democrat, right? Like he's not big in on this libertarian nonsense.
Is he?
He's like, I don't know. He's more like he owns the Washington Post. I don't want to get all political here, but I don't see Bezos and Musk being. I don't see them as being the same. But
I do think that
clearly they overlap.
They don't pay. Amazon hasn't paid like the last year was the first time they paid taxes. And
no, I hear you. He takes
years.
advantage of the system, but I think he leaned a little bit more to the Buffettian executive who who's gonna is just gonna keep getting rich and figuring out, but maybe wants to give back. Doesn't he? He wants to turn Earth into a park, right? Like he has a bit more altruistic meaning to his existence. Musk, Zuck, they don't play that game. They don't
Look,
play
no,
that crap at all.
I do,
I'm not
but I
trying to
do feel
defend
like
Bezos. I'm just saying,
Musk, it, and I don't mean to put words in his mouth, but Musk in
do
some
it.
ways is focused on like normal people's existence getting better because he's giving you
Kind
cars
of
that
you.
don't emit. He's giving you solar panel. He's doing it badly,
All right,
but
let's
let's
yeah,
just
let's get off.
say
Yeah, yeah.
that's what he's doing.
I'm cutting you off. Let's get off of Musk and Bezos. Let's go. Let's stay in this like libertarian metaverse.
All
All
of
right, here.
them
Yeah.
do have this libertarian streak to them, like unfettered, non-regulated, and the ultimate permutation of that is the metaverse to
So here's
me.
what I want to bring up. There's a headline today. BlackRock says 2022 will be a game changer for the metaverse as big tech companies pour in billions of dollars. Is what you're referring to.
Hmm.
Here's my point: is that wasn't there supposed to be? Isn't the reason why we're doing all this hand wringing about big tech in general is that we're kind of waiting to regulate and be in control of the next big thing? But don't you feel like there are two things going on? One is that we're a new dawn, a new age is coming. We're pouring a bunch of money in it, and we're ignoring it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, where are the guardrails? Where are the adults? I don't understand. Like, this isn't. I feel like this is
Well,
like it's starting to unravel before our eyes. Now's the chance, and once again, we're going to be looking back in 15 years and be like, why didn't we do anything about it? Why didn't we stop this?
because they move faster than the regulations can move. And what makes like the EU's move to regulate Facebook so interesting, and really Apple's move to give you the ability to stop getting tracked, what makes it so interesting is that um, Apple will do more damage to Facebook and their move into the metaverse than any regulator will because it
Well,
takes so
yeah,
long to regulate things that by the time they regulate it, it's 5 years ago, the thing they're regulating. And Facebook has already, Zuckerberg has spent $10 billion in R&D on the metaverse. That's twice as much as
yeah,
Bezos has spent to get himself into the mesopause.
yeah.
That's
Well, they
he's
said,
spending more money
yeah,
in a space that he hopes will never be regulated because as we covered yesterday, Decentraland, like the easy access entry point into the metaverse, you can't figure out who makes the decision there. Like if you get groped in Decentraland or someone spews nonsense in Decentraland or there's some like, really offensive thing or whatever, who makes the decision? There is no one. They're like tokens of like decentralized ether, and I mean, what the fuck is that? Like, and that's
well, then
something
that's
Zuckerberg and Thiel, I think, recognize
yeah.
explicitly.
Yeah, this is their version of of going to Mars. This is their
It's
right. I mean, this is
utopia if
their
you're a libertarian.
yeah. It's all about finding. It's like it's Lewis and Clark. It's all about finding uncharted territory and putting your flag in first and setting up the rules and making the most money. And here's my fear. I have a million fears about this. Is that it's kind of like divesting from big oil. You divest, maybe they go private, or maybe some other entity buys them, and we don't know what they're up to. The EU is gonna push Facebook out, WhatsApp out, and then this is kind of what Mark wants. Is he wants to throw it all into Meta anyway. I mean, he just renamed his company to Meta Platforms. He's gonna pull out of the normal and go all in on the Meta and he's gonna blame the regulators for forcing him into this Wild West, and then it's gonna escalate. It's gonna exponentially escalate. It's almost like a version of divestment from big oil is trying to figure out how to regulate big tech now, but they're not regulating the metaverse part of big tech. They're regulating the thing that happened 10 years ago. It's just like it's unraveling.
I mean, like not
I'm
even.
losing it. Losing it.
Well, that you should be losing it. I mean, in a very real way, what the metaverse represents is untraceable capitalism, right?
Yeah, it's
Like
like the
it's
dark web, the dark net.
It's not
The
even dark. Like the combination with NFTs and crypto and your ability to buy and your ability to traverse it, your ability to look like anything and talk like anything and be like anything. We've already proven that social media, with its informal network of policies made in an ad hoc way, doesn't work. Right? Like all we do is subvert elections. People are easily
well,
led. Like
it
um,
works in that regard.
well, it doesn't work for the betterment of society.
No,
It
but it
works for the
works.
betterment of a college
Yeah,
dropout who owns
really
the
does.
voting power.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
really works well for that. And Peter Thiel knows it, and Mark Zuckerberg knows it, and the Google founders know it, and even the adults in the room recognize it,
Well, it's
right?
not
Because
just
they're
them though.
investing in the
It's
metaverse themselves.
Nike knows it, Walmart knows it, Disney knows it. All three have already. And really, this is like if you're lucky enough to be an S&P 500 and have a bunch of cash hanging around, you're lucky enough to start building your metaverse R&D now because this is
But
where we're
to
going.
Disney's credit, even leaving chair Bob Iger said the biggest barrier is how to protect like their customers effectively, right? Like
Yeah,
this Disney experience, when you go to Disneyland, you cannot walk around in actual Disney theme parks just spewing the N-word and groping like anybody you want. You can't do that, right? And there's a
right.
recognition that we need, like, we want a curated experience in which
Yeah.
everyone can feel comfortable because that's our customer and that's how we
Well,
feel. Zuckerberg is the
Disney, yeah.
opposite. He
Well,
doesn't care about that.
Disney will be the just like now, I suppose. Disney will be the PG-13 version of the metaverse. This Disney's meta, just like now, it's sort of a controlled environment. I don't know. Well, here's what I
But
really want
there
to know.
are way more not Disneys
Yeah, no, of course, of course.
for whom unfettered capitalism, where it's unregulated and there's it's untraceable,
Here,
is
yeah,
is basically the Wild West. You already can get a meta mortgage and you can buy meta property.
I have
There's
four of them.
no
Yeah,
one saying what does redlining look like. I made the joke yesterday about like a casino in the metaverse made $7.5 million in 3 months. But what about like the meta zoning rules? Like, is there meta zoning rules like about how? And I
well,
this is the worst case scenario for Peter Thiel and
yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg, where government comes in and says what you can and can't do in a metaverse. But
Well,
the
that's what I'm.
reason why those regulations exist is to protect you from like excluding massive populations
Yeah.
from
Well, that's what I'm
opportunity.
wondering about. That's what I'm wondering is why are we watching it? Why are we watching the faucet drip and not try to fix the faucet? I mean, we got ahead of that concept in outer space, by setting these international rules. We see the harm that big tech can create. We see them going over to the metaverse, but then BlackRock is kind of coming out and saying like, "Oh, this is great, lots of money." But we've been kind of relying on BlackRock to play the adult a little bit with certain things. So I just don't.
Who plays the adult in a room where there's dictators running it?
Well,
We
that's the
know that
thing, right?
3 of the 8 largest metaverse builders are
Yeah.
dictatorships.
So,
They're
so who's
fake
going to be the
public.
first? Who's the first big entity to talk about the guardrails? Is it going to be a Larry Fink? Who is it going to be?
It's
I mean,
academics. We had
okay, but
one on our
that's
show. Like
sure.
Brea
But
Adiamo
then
is
we're
like a academic. She's a PhD candidate. She studies like race and technology, and she's the one talking about it, right? Like
right.
it doesn't
That
happen in
scares
government
me.
agencies. The people who grilled quote unquote Mark Zuckerberg in Congress didn't know that Zuckerberg was not Satya Nadella. Like they were asking about a product that wasn't Zuck.
That's part of the problem. Yeah, the part of the problem is that our current regulators, as we keep calling them, are essentially appointed by our elected officials, and they don't even really understand that Facebook owns WhatsApp.
Yeah,
Nor do they
there's
really understand what WhatsApp is. Nor do they really understand what encryption does or doesn't do. So
but they
that's
don't.
Yeah.
They also at the limit of like every regulator taking these companies at their word. There's not progressive regulation in as much as they say like we are going to regulate to 12 years from 20 years from now. We're going to set a regulation now in anticipation of look,
Well, Europe seems
privacy
to
is a human right. So
yeah.
if you contravene it in any way, you're contravening a human right. The US didn't do that. Right, like the U.S. basically regulates retroactively, and they wait
Right.
for you all of your data to come out. In a study found at the end of last year or mid last year that Facebook can read your WhatsApp texts to one another before you hit send because it's not encrypted as you're typing it. In which
Right.
case, what's the point of end-to-end encryption if someone can read everything you're writing? And that someone is a college dropout who has all your data anyway.
And the college dropout just lost his professor. So now
Oh,
who's he going to rely on? Here's the thing, and I did want to talk about that briefly too. Is that this would typically be something that would be celebrated, especially from the left, that Peter Thiel's leaving Meta. But I think people are just they've given up. Like it's like who cares anymore, right? And why does he even need to be on the board? Because Zuck controls the board, controls the voting power, and Peter can just call him if he wants to weigh in on something. I mean, what does it matter anyway?
I do
But
think
here's the
it's
thing I want to
interesting
know.
though. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I want to know, and I feel like I'm not going to get the answer because our so-called listeners don't ever listen to me. How much do you hate all this metaverse talk? Do you
Why would
care?
you?
Can someone please weigh in? We gotta. We're in an active conversation with one of our fans on LinkedIn as we speak. You tell us. Somebody tell us. Well, because I really want to know. Like, is this like, are we in a situation where you're sensing something is amiss? Your spidey sense is tingling a little bit, but maybe you don't understand it. You're too old to figure it out. You're not you're not a libertarian, so you don't care. Like, what do you think? I don't know. Like, this seems like you know, it's the same thing. Matt, you brought it up in pre-production. We had the same feeling. We have the advantage here of we go over the news constantly on a day-to-day basis. We see it trickling in. We see big picture. We see little picture. We see things forming before other people see it forming because this is the nature of what we do here. We were worried about the coronavirus 2 or 3 months before the U.S. went crazy in March when it finally hit, when Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz was licking microphones. We were already worried about it. We were already asking our friends if they were worried about it. We're doing the same thing right now with Metaverse. I'm just curious. Do other people care? Do they see this the way we see this? I don't know that they're going to reach out and tell us, but it's the thing I'm most curious about because we do hammer at it a lot, and a lot of it is probably over the heads of a lot of the people who do listen, because unless you spend time really reading up about what kind of things that Matt's talking about, it just sounds like made up La La Land. It just sounds nuts.
I think you just made an advertisement for why people need to listen to us. Like it
Okay, good.
because I mean, Damien and Emma like they review over 1,000 articles for every single episode. And when you do that over time, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of episodes over the course of a year, or articles over the course of a year. And there are tea leaves to be read, right? Like we don't limit it to what just CNBC says. We're reading like what academics are worried about. We're reading like governance issues at these companies. And you get this really robust picture of an ecosystem that's forming
Yeah,
around the metaverse. And the metaverse ecosystem is effectively, and we covered this ad nauseum, 89% white people,
right.
72% male, making decisions about how the architecture and infrastructure of a unregulated space is going to look now that will be incredibly difficult to unwind later. And companies are pouring money into it,
Yeah.
knowing that you will be happily putting on your VR goggles in Distractaland or Decentraland, whatever you want to call it, spending real money and real time in this place where you are not traced except by those people. That to
Yeah,
me
yeah.
is terrifying.
Well, this is the advantage we have over some of the other researchers in our field, and why we left the mothership is because a lot of those people are and it's no fault of their own that they're sort of forced to are sort of focused on annual year over year pictures, occasionally quarterly, occasionally with a few events here and there. But you can see when you pay attention to these things daily, and you don't just do like a Spotify story once and then maybe again like 14 months later, is that you can actually make the connection between Peter Thiel, Peloton, Spotify, like all in one. Like you can see these connections forming, but again, you have to be paying attention to every discrete part. Uh, yeah,
You can also see that Facebook Meta stock is down 2.5% today. 250 basis
is
point
that
drop
meaningful?
on the news of Teal leaving. It's down, and still down since they announced their earnings, over 33% from a month ago.
I wonder if that's like in the future. I wonder. This is another thing, and we don't have to go into this, but I'm starting to wonder now. So you're making the case that the metaverse is, it's the transfer of power from the world as we know it to an unregulated world, which makes sense to me. I understand that's what a libertarian would do, right? They'd seek out an unregulated world first, and they'd create it, they'd own it, they'd figure out how to manipulate it, make all the money from it. So I'm wondering if are we on the dawn of an age where a lot of these companies stop being publicly traded? Are we going to see an exodus from public to private markets just because, as you pointed out, they don't want to be tracked?
You
I
don't
I, I
have
mean,
to. You don't have
uh,
to. Look at the trend line for companies, and actually the libertarian sort of ethos has been embedded in fake public companies and dual class shares over
right.
the last 10 years already.
That's true. That's being allowed, and somehow this is being allowed to happen by the market, right? Like
This is and this is
they
the
could do
that
take care of that in a second.
that gap I don't understand at all. If you are an investor, if you're a pension fund, you're an institutional investor, how is it okay
I
that
don't
you
know.
have a publicly traded entity that you're
I don't
forced
get
to
this.
hold because you're mandated to hold some index, but you have no actual investor rights at? What
I don't
is
understand this
that?
one. I don't
What
get
is
how this
that?
is not. I don't get how people are not as upset about this as we are. I don't understand this
and,
part. I
and
don't get it.
frankly, because investors have largely sanctioned it, saying like, whatever, we just have to hold the index and we'll do what we can to engage, because investors implicitly sanctioned it, what they effectively said was, we're okay with companies making tons of money for us, even if we have no rights. And therefore, something like the metaverse becomes totally socialized as an okay idea, because you have no rights in the metaverse. There's no tracking, there's no nothing, but there's tons of money, and therefore we must be in it. Now all the companies that are running it basically have been sanctioned to have this libertarian ethos where they are unaccountable for all their actions
Yeah,
and
that's the scary
regulating
part.
them.
That's the scary part.
It's a terrifying, that trend line happened not now, and this gets to your point about like, where are the regulators? The regulators should have stepped in 10 years ago and said, if you're going to go public, there are some basic
Well,
fundamental public
this can still
company
happen.
attributes, right?
Well, even this is what I'm saying about Neil Young, though. I mean, he recognizes the problem is that he's not. He knows that you don't speak about Spotify as a group of executives, as a board, as a workforce that makes decisions together. It's one person. Like that's very dangerous. And he's originally talking. The reason why he pulled out originally is about misinformation about the vaccine. And again, like he is able to understand pretty quickly that it's about one dude, and that just can't. I don't know how that flies anymore. I don't know how. And again, like as this other guy, this libertarian guy who Peter Thiel's invested in, he's very proudly putting his flag in the fact that no one's ever going to mess with my dictatorship, so we're good to go. Like let's do this. And yeah, I don't know how we're the only ones who seem to be pissed off about this. It just can't. To me, this is always going to be like I'm complaining about guardrails and all this bullshit. Just do this one. Just do this one for us.
Honestly, as a starting point, seems to make some sense. And once you do that, like,
It's the bedrock of this society that we live in is counterbalance to right. It's like checks and balances, right? It's like that you learn that in
It's
second
accountability.
grade.
It's accountability.
But it's like
It's the
it's the bedrock of this stupid country that we profess to love is like checks and balances. And I know people are gonna say, well, the real checks and balances, the shareholder, you don't have to invest in the company, blah blah blah. That's
It
completely
doesn't
inaccurate
work.
statement.
The
It doesn't
like
work.
and actually this contravenes what Neil is saying about divestment. Like, don't invest in banks that are funding fossil fuels. All right, fine. That's great. I'm not going to weigh in right now on the divestment investment, like
Well,
engage,
he
not
had to hit his
engage.
E. He was trying to do all the ESG.
I
All
know
he had to hit the E.
he was trying to
Come
cover
on.
the full thing. And Neil, I still want you to come on the show. I'm literally going to reach
Yeah,
out
don't
to
take
your
that job at
PR people.
Sustainalytics. Come work for us.
This Sustainalytics job in Neil Young would be the greatest thing ever. But it does contravene that idea of you know, ownership, right? Like, you are the check and balance. And this is what infuriates me about BlackRock and Vanguard and Fidelity. Basically, ownership is consolidated, if not with the one stupid fucking libertarian, co-founder who like doesn't care what you think. It's consolidated with the three mega, investors who largely don't care what you think and vote whatever they're going to vote anyway. Do you think BlackRock actually votes all? If BlackRock voted against management someplace, it would be big news. Do you think BlackRock looks at that and says we should vote against management everywhere where it's right or correct to do that? Or do you think BlackRock says, well, I don't know, we're only 8% of the vote. It's probably not going to change anyway. Like, what do you think
Well,
BlackRock says?
yeah. The reality is that, and when you dig around, there's not even a unified voice anyway, because there's 150 different types of funds all voting on the same issue, and they don't always even vote in the same direction. So I don't know. Yeah, it's like,
My point is, BlackRock, if 98% of their votes historically have sided with management,
yeah.
is anyone really thinking, right? Like,
Well,
are you saying
they're thinking
we
about short
agree?
term. They're thinking about money. I mean, they're thinking about short term gain is what they're thinking, I suppose. No.
But 98% agree. You're basically saying, and this is
Yeah.
BlackRock, Vanguard, Fidelity, they all 90% plus agree with management. Are you
Yeah.
really saying that a collection of thousands of people at the largest institutions of the world all nearly 100% agree that the people running the companies that they own, nearly 100% of them are doing an excellent job? There's nothing else to talk about. There's nothing to see here.
Yeah.
That's what we think. That's when
Yeah.
you know the system's broken, because what you
Yeah.
should see is a vast disagreement with how companies are being run. Like, you should
Yeah.
see.
It also
Mhm.
undermines the fact that CEO tenure seems to be so low. So why aren't they? How come they're not in their jobs for 50 years like Bill Belichick? Like, why are they always leaving? Something must be going wrong.
Everything's going wrong, and that's where we should end our discussion.
Oh,
Everything
now
everywhere is wrong.
come on, somebody reach out. I want to know if what you think about all these, the amount of time we spend on the metaverse. At least
That
at least we're trying to today. At least we attempted to put it into to like real life terms, right? Into like modern day ESG terms, right?
I love your optimism that somebody's going to actually reach out. It's about as high as my optimism that the metaverse is going to turn out a-okay.
Well, if you
That
don't want to reach out to us and tell us what you think, hire us to do something else.
Either way, Damian Rollis, Matt Moscardi, Free Float Media, Business Pants. Come back tomorrow, where we're going to have another bunch of nuggets and maybe some more metaverse discussion afterwards, because there's
Yeah.
so much to talk about.
Don't forget, Fancy Expert on Friday.
Fancy Expert of Friday. We'll see you then.